Hello, everybody. Tonight I'm going to be talking about Beyond Borders, a project that I've been working on for a few months now to try to help look at what's going on internationally, particularly in the job market, and then also in technology and some other areas. So we developed this website, and if you want to talk while we're talking, we're going to be on Jitsi Meet. So this is the web link here. It's just Jitsi / Beyond Borders. But basically the main topics is going to be international topics. Tonight I wanted to talk about the weather internationally and kind of look at what's going on with that. So there's kind of a map here that we're going to be studying together and kind of looking at what these kind of like average temperatures are, what different temperature zones mean for kind of like the work environment around the world. So hopefully you'll have some fun kind of studying this with me. I'm just going to make sure this is working on Facebook and LinkedIn. And basically, so you kind of have kind of an average annual temperature. And you might be surprised. It gets pretty cold in some areas and pretty warm in others. So what I'm going to do is circle this. I think we should probably do it in black, probably. Just do it in dark black. So some of the more nicer areas, particularly in the United States, are kind of these zones here in this yellow zone here. So that's kind of a nice temperature area, and this is called basically the Mediterranean climate. And you can see all throughout here, this is basically like a yellow zone here, and you have pretty good temperature year-round in most of these areas here. And then kind of on the southern coast of Brazil down to Argentina, you have that kind of area there. And let me just make sure that I got this right. I think I got it. 10. Let's make it 20. So that should kind of, let's make it even bigger than that. 50. So these areas, and this actually extends out to California and then the West Coast. So there's kind of like a zone right in there. Sorry, that's not the best map to draw for this, but and a lot of this started like temperature wise, it's just becoming too hot to work in some areas. You already are getting up to like 115 degrees in some places down in Australia. I noticed the other day. I'll show you the map that I use for this. It's called Zoom.Earth, and this gives you kind of a global temperature map. And you can see some areas are getting actually quite cold, even in the United States. And so it basically means that some of that map may be that the temperature gets so hot in the summertime, but then it's super cold in the wintertime. So it's kind of a weird paradox that we have in the United States. So actually down in Florida and California, you can see it's 53 degrees, whereas it's 69 degrees down in Florida here. And I'll kind of zoom out here so you can see some of the other stuff going on. But look at how hot Australia is. So there's places down here 117 degrees. That's going to be very boiling hot right now. And then in the summertime, India gets very hot as well. So we kind of wanted to look at that map pretty detailed because it will matter quite a lot where you want to work. And then so here, the surprising thing is it's actually North Africa is a great place. So right in here, I would say especially would be really nice. And then Italy looks really good. And then, but basically this whole region, and then off to the coast here, and you can even see down into here, becomes pretty nice climate. And then you kind of have a separate climate up here in Northern Europe, which is pretty nice too, but it can also be pretty cold in the wintertime. And then China actually being quite good year-round. Most of it is pretty warm, actually. That's one thing that kind of surprised me when I first started doing some of this analysis, is that just how much land China has that's actually pretty warm year-round. But if you're looking for places in Africa, basically South Africa is pretty good. And then along the coast here, now they actually speak Portuguese here, but basically the coastline here, and it's actually pretty surprising in the inland here. There's actually some mountainous areas, up in Kenya and even in Ethiopia. It can be alright as well, but this doesn't have the ocean front. And then basically most of Australia on this side, and then Tasmania, and then you can even see New Zealand looking pretty good, especially on the boot area. And then actually, but what I'm noticing is a lot of these areas get very hot, so you have to be cautious about this coast of Australia, because it can get very hot down there. So what do we need to like worry about? Pretty much, let's do that. Let's do those areas kind of in a pink. This might be too hot. So, and that's perfectly reasonable. So actually West Africa gets quite hot, right? So that's the first area that you need to think about. And then definitely India gets quite hot. Almost all of India is very hot in the summertime. And then kind of the coastal region of Mexico, being the Central America, gets pretty hot. And then definitely there's some places down in here. So I would say on this side, this is basically talking about Thailand. So Thailand and all this gets to be almost too hot in the summertime. This can be upwards of 90, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 20, 25 degrees Celsius, more than that, like 30 degrees Celsius. Most of the world works on Celsius, but this is a nice map because this shows Fahrenheit, because a lot of Americans use Fahrenheit. But you can kind of see that on this map here. So I'm going to go ahead and save that map. Now, basically with Beyond Borders project, we're basically looking at how to work beyond your own border. We made this map a couple weeks ago to kind of look at where you'd want to work. So like if you're in India, you basically have some options to work beyond your own local border, and most of that is with China and actually Africa, right? So a lot of people aren't really looking at East Africa as an opportunity zone. In India or in Asia, a lot of people look at Southeast Asia, and you can tell that basically one of the problems is that it still is quite hot even along the East Coast, but once you get down to South Africa, it's actually pretty cool in the summertime and year round. It's kind of like more Mediterranean climate. So basically you saw that on this map here, right? So it's actually quite hot right here in Kenya and those areas. So even if you did do a Beyond Border project with someone in Africa and you are in India, it would be pretty tough, potentially because of the climate. And also you got diseases that happen in some of these warmer areas, like malaria and so on. So let's see if we can get a malaria map up. Let me try to look that up. So we do have a malaria map here, and it pretty much maps pretty closely to the temperature map, right? And you can see right in here, these are the malaria cases, definitely in West Africa. There's a lot of problems with malaria, and then as you get into the jungle, and then these hotter areas. So basically you're kind of skipping out on a lot of those diseases by avoiding some of those areas. And it's also a long-term thing, because as the earth keeps getting warmer, particularly near the equator, we're going to see some more problems with temperature and like that. Let's see if this is a better map. This is maybe number of cases. So you can see India basically having quite a lot of malaria, and then also down here into Thailand and Malaysia. And even here down in like Bali, we want to be concerned, because that could be a lot of people traveling here into Bali right there, and then Papua New Guinea having quite a lot of cases of malaria as well. And then this is showing some other details like that. So pretty helpful map to take a look at. Let me save that map. I'll post that to the chat, so we can kind of look at that in detail. So in terms of secondary climates, you basically have these black climates, and then you have this green climate area. So this is an interesting kind of proposal, because sometimes these areas might not be super bad. We're going to do that in kind of a green. We'll do like a dark green to show that, and then I'll do my pixel up to 50 again. So we have some significant areas. So basically a lot of that in America is around the Midwest, and it does get quite cold. It can get even down to negative degrees in some of those regions. And then I would highly recommend Northern Europe along the coast here. This is like Amsterdam, Denmark, and these regions. And then this is London, and then even out to Ireland has some pretty good, but it does get cold in the wintertime, definitely in some of these areas. So and then this is all like Iran. Like you have basically northern Iran and basically Turkey in here. So that's an interesting region to think about. And then I'm going to basically look at Japan and Korea as one kind of chunk here with that same kind of climate on that. And then the South Island down here in New Zealand has some of that other climate. And then Chile is interesting because it's actually a combination of both of these. So you can see there's some quite cold areas up in the mountains and all along here. So you basically have basically South America, meaning Colombia, and some of these, there's some colder areas up in the hills there. But actually this should probably be a black area. I would say that it's primarily yellow zone, not really green. So we might want to redo that. Let's just redo that map here for this one to be a black zone here. And so then you can kind of see the climate up in is actually kind of surprising. Up in Colombia, they can get 70 degrees pretty much year round, even though it's right near the equator. The equator is basically running right through here. And another surprising thing is around the lake. Here you basically have pretty good climate year round in this. So let's just put this in black around the Great Lakes of Africa. So it's actually quite warmer around the Great Lakes of Africa compared to the Great Lakes of the United States. And this is where most of the wildlife, the larger wildlife, so you basically have smaller animals as you get towards the Amazon jungle, and you get bigger animals as you get near the Great Lakes of Africa, elephants, rhinos, and other things like that. But let me just see if we've missed anything else on this whole tour of the climate and temperature. If you have any questions, we're going to be doing chat on the Jitsi Meet, so you can just go into this Jitsi Meet here and log in, and then we can chat. But basically we're trying to work on this Beyond Borders project, and my friend and I was helping me, basically wanted to get kind of a perspective of what's going on around the world. We're going to try to have a live meeting online like this, and anyone is welcome to join and talk about what they think for the Beyond Borders. But I hope you've had a nice discussion on this, and we're going to talk about the global internet map, connectivity map next in the next discussion. I'm going to shut this one down, and we'll have a new one in just a second. Thank you so much. I'll be right back shortly.